Welcome to Crappy to Happy podcast, a special series on our Sacred Stories podcast dedicated to sharing the incredible stories of grit, grace, and love in our new book, Crappy to Happy, Sacred Stories of Transformational Joy. I am your host, Rev Ariel Patricia, and together we will answer the question, do bad things happen to good people, or could the difficulties we face be gifts in disguise? Today we are speaking with Dr. Ann Worth, whose story in Crappy to Happy is titled Mercy. Dr. Worth is a Christian author, speaker, counselor, and workshop leader. She has a heart for animals and people, especially those in need of fostering. Ann serves the homeless and refugee communities in Dallas, Texas, and her mission is to champion the forgotten. So it is a pleasure to say welcome, Dr. Ann Worth, to Crappy to Happy.
Thank you so much.
When your story came in for the book, I remember reading it and I remember thinking, there's so much to it. There's so much to it. There's such depth in this story. There's such courage in this story. And there's so much that others can relate to and draw from. So without, giving the whole story away, but tell our audience what your story, Mercy, is about, please.
Oh, it's about the mercy of God. I walked for so many years, well, actually until I was 55 years old, walked on the dark side of life. I went places where angels fear to tread, and I grew up in a situation that left me feeling unlovable, just downright defective. And I tried so many ways and so many different things, including drugs and alcohol and lots of relationships, to give myself that sense of worthiness. But all those things were met with just further disappointment, to the point of hopelessness, actually, where I did try to take my own life more than once. And I would never, ever have believed that God would be merciful to me after all the things I did and the way I felt about him, because he was the last person that I thought I would ever trust, let alone surrender my life to. But he changed everything.
So share a little bit. You were at a workshop. Let's give the audience a little bit more, because your story is really powerful. Can you share a little bit about your workshop experience?
Yes, absolutely. This workshop is called the Barnabas Journey, and it's called Barnabas because Barnabas was given a second chance. And this workshop is for people who need a second chance with God. And I was terrified of God. I grew up in a very fundamentalist, legalistic church. And as far as I was concerned, God was somebody you couldn't please. He had impossible rules and, in fact, could strike you dead in a New York minute. So he was not someone that I wanted to have anything to do with. But I was diagnosed with an incurable disease, and more than the disease, the fears about that, I feared where I would go when I died. And I thought I was dying. And so I had to get religion real quick. Of course, it's not really about religion. It's about a spiritual relationship with a loving God. But so anyway, I ended up at this workshop, and I really thought that I would have a heart attack walking down the hall. I was so terrified. And terrified that those people would think, that I was so awful, that they would condemn me. And because I had been condemned by the church more than once. And so I just nothing had ever made me more afraid. And I'd been beaten up. I'd been shot at. I was more afraid walking down that hall into that room where 65 Christians stood than I'd ever been in my life.
But that workshop was life-changing for you.
It changed every belief. It healed my disease. It opened my heart that had a huge lock on it. It changed everything about me. I feel like it changed every cell in my body, and it's never gone away. It was a vision of Jesus that was so brilliant, so loving, so kind, that it melted any resistance and any lies I had ever believed about myself, about other people, about God. I was forgiven. I was adopted. I mean, there aren't any words to say what it was like to stand in that presence of that light.
So listeners, Anne does go into details and walks you through, like you lived the workshop experience with her in the story. It's a beautiful story to read called Mercy in our book, Crappy to Happy, Sacred Stories of Transformational Joy. And Anne, the story Mercy is based on or comes from your book, Call Me Worthy. Can you share a little bit about your book, Call Me Worthy, please?
Yes, ironically, the chapter in Crappy to Happy is actually the pivotal point of my life story, because the first 18 chapters of the book, they're actually pretty entertaining, although they weren't easy to live, such as ending up in the ashram of Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh and in AA meetings and rehab centers. And I didn't lead a dull life by any means, but it will really illuminate how children who don't feel wanted and who are abused in various ways grow up believing such lies about themselves. And it is really a miracle of God that He kept me alive until I could find the true answer. So most of Call Me Worthy is about how unworthy I felt and how God in His mercy changed everything about that.
So one of the threads in Crappy to Happy, and was also a thread in our first book of the series, Chaos to Clarity, and we didn't, plan it this way, but it is the human experience or the spiritual experiences that we're all having, is that it was around the gift in the pain. And it sounds like you've had, some pain leading up to the experience that you share in Crappy to Happy. What would you say about that? Do you feel that your experience was a gift in disguise, or the pain you went through ultimately was a gift in your life?
Absolutely. And not only was it a gift to me, it is a gift that I feel called to give to others. At 78 years old, I feel like I have this new calling, and I have felt that way since that day when I was 55 years old, that it is never too late. It doesn't matter what has happened to you. It doesn't matter what you have done. There is a new life waiting for each and every person. And my book is really such evidence of that. And as I said, the pivotal point of my life is the chapter in Crappy to Happy. And, when I had to admit I was an alcoholic, when I had to admit I was addicted to prescription drugs, when I had abortions, when I was divorced, each and every one of those things seemed like the worst thing that could ever happen. And every single one of them brought me closer and closer to where I needed to be. I met people who really cared. I learned meditation. I learned mindfulness. I learned many, many techniques that did keep me alive, but I had to believe that I had a daddy in God. That is what I needed. I needed someone that I knew would never leave me, would never condemn me, would show me mercy for the rest of my life.
Mm. It's beautiful, your courage, and for you to speak out on this, because your chapter in Copy to Happy called Mercy was very open, very raw, very vulnerable, very courageous. And it sounds like all of the chapters in Call Me Worthy, even what you were just sharing about your experiences, are open, raw, vulnerable, and courageous. And Anne, I would say a real gift to others, because I know people are listening right now, and my prayer for them is that they can also feel worthy, that they can listen to your words and know that they are the same, and that the hope and the love and the joy that you have found is also available for them.
Absolutely. And that is my deepest hope for the book, and even the chapter, although it only describes that pivotal point in my life, is that people can relate and they can say, oh, that's how I felt. Oh, that's what happened to me. I think that's one of the things that has given me such compassion for other people. And even as I wrote the book, I realized that I had not totally forgiven my parents. And so God allowed me to see the people who had hurt me through his eyes as also abused children who were simply reacting to life from the lies they believed about themselves. So, I mean, it is across the board forgiveness, healing, new life, new hope. Um, there's nothing that's ever happened to any of us that can't be healed.
Hmm. So sharing your story in Copy to Happy, sharing that pivotal moment, when you found your daddy, right, as you call him, the daddy in God, the loving parents, the unending mercy and love. Was that hard for you to write that? Was that challenging? What was that experience like, sharing that in words?
Sharing the chapter, writing the chapter about meeting God was so thrilling to be able to tell that. It was very painful to write the book leading up to that. I mean, I could almost cry right now thinking about what happened to that little girl. But the joy that has been given to me and the ability to help other people, I knew there must be some redeeming element to everything that had happened. And the fact that, somebody can come to my counseling office and almost no matter what they can tell me, I can honestly say, I understand. So God has used this and all the things that have happened to me to help other people. And that's my deepest longing for this book, is that many people will relate and get hope from it.
I do believe that we do come here for personal reasons, as a soul, but I do believe we also come in service to the greater collective, to the greater human heart, if right. And so I believe that individuals such as yourself and many of the other authors in Copy to Happy are here for both reasons, and the horrors that you have endured. And many of the authors talk about the horrors of that happened, or allude to the horrors that happened to them in childhood, especially. It, it, it not that it makes sense, but I think that I think that you are living your soul's reason for being here. I think that you are healing on a much larger level than you may realize you are, because you have endured that and you have come through it, and you are moving forward with a loving, open heart to help others. And Massive. That is huge, Anne, what you are living here today.
I do feel like it's a gift. I feel like everything that has happened has opened my heart and has helped me understand other people and has helped them understand themselves. And as I said, have hope where maybe there was no hope. They thought it was too late for them. I can tell you, there's a saying in the recovery community, it's never too late to have a happy childhood.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So we're speaking with Dr. Ann Worth, who shared a beautiful chapter called Mercy in our book, Crappy to Happy, Sacred Stories of Transformational Joy. And this story, Mercy, is from her book, Call Me Worthy. And it's the pivotal point of really turning her life around, of meeting Jesus and changing the course of her life. And please share your website or where people can find your book and anything else about you that you'd like.
Thank you. It's Dr. Anne, Anne, Worth, WORTH, author.com. I'm so excited to be able to say author. And you mentioned purpose. I do a discovery workshop where people write their purpose statement. And my purpose for last year was light the darkness. And I asked God, how am I going to do that? And he said, write a book. And so I wrote a book about living in the light. And so I feel very fortunate. And I'm doing some blogging. So those short articles are also on my website.
So it's DrAnneworth, author.com. Dr. Ann Worth, author.com is your website.
Yes.
That's wonderful. And it has been just a pleasure to speak with you. It's been inspiring to speak with you. And I do believe, I'll speak for the listeners, that it is that this has been a transformative call for many people listening.
Thank you for the opportunity, and it's so nice to meet you.
Absolutely. It's nice to meet you as well. So listeners, you've been listening to Dr. Ann Worth. Her story, Mercy, is in our book, Crappy to Happy, Sacred Stories of Transformational Joy, along with 30 other incredible stories. Crappy to Happy is available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, booksellers worldwide, or direct through Sacred Stories Publishing. And also, Dr. Ann Worth has written a book, Call Me Worthy, which you can find, again, from her website, drannworthauthor.com. And I'm sure Amazon. Yes, Amazon. And so I would encourage you to pick up both. Pick up Crappy to Happy and pick up Call Me Worthy. Thank you again, Anne, for being on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience always for listening to Sacred Stories Podcast. I am your host, Rev Ariel Patricia. And until next time, as always, I encourage you to write your sacred story well.